Today on Ballistic BBQ, I'm going to be cooking up sweet tea glazed barbecue spare ribs on the Patron. Let's get going. Here are those ribs we're cooking up. These are 2 racks of spare ribs, and these are 2 whole racks, meaning they are not trimmed, they are untrimmed. So if I were to cut along the seam here, then I'd have St. Louis style. This is that breastplate, it's still intact. And this is old school. This is how they used to do it. In fact, there's a barbecue pit here where I live, and the folks that started this place shortly after World War II are relatives of a family that had a very successful, very popular barbecue restaurant in the Dallas area. I believe they closed in the early 1980s, called Shoemakers. And they have not changed their family recipe. Everything they're doing is exactly how they used to do it in Dallas. And it's amazing. And this is how they're cooking up the ribs. They're not trimming anything. They're just giving you that whole piece of rib with that breast portion on there. So let's season these up. Kick it off with some kosher salt. The theme of this cook is kind of going back to the days of old, with the exception of this glaze I'm doing. But simple seasoning. They're going to take this to another level with the sauce, which, by the way, is amazing. So you can see very minimal trimming. I did remove the membrane and I removed the flap here, but there's dangly pieces of fat. I'm just leaving it as is, and that's, I probably actually did more trimming than they did back in the day. I'll do some black pepper. All right, that looks good. I have one more rack to season. My pit's still not up to temperature yet, so when I'm done with the seasoning here, I'm going to show you that sauce recipe. Okay, now for that sweet tea glaze. We're going to kick it off with 4 cups of, this is black tea. Now you can use a classic, like if you want to go with Lipton, you know, whatever. This is actually Earl Grey, and I did this as a sun tea yesterday, and I made sure that it was very, very strong. I went with Earl Grey just simply because it is such a strong tea, and I want to be able to get that tea flavor because there is going to be a lot of sugar in this and other spices because we're making a barbecue sauce here, you know, a barbecue glaze. So 4 cups of black tea, 1/3 cup apple cider vinegar, and 4 cups of sugar. I'm using the turbinado, you know, raw sugar. It does seem like a very small pot that I'm using, but it's the pot I used last night and it actually worked out perfectly. And right here I have 2 teaspoons of black pepper, 1/2 teaspoon of kosher salt, 1/2 teaspoon of paprika, 1/2 teaspoon of whole mustard seed, 1/2 teaspoon of celery seed, and 1/2 teaspoon, about 1 kind of small, like medium to small bay leaf that I crushed up. That goes in. Then it's easy. I'm just going to get this stirred up, and we're going to get it on the stove top. I'm going to bring it up to a boil, then immediately lower the heat to a simmer, and I'm going to simmer it until it reduces almost by half. And then you're going to end up with this. This is what I ended up with after using all these measurements here. It's not too thick, it's not too, you know, thin, too watery, but boy, is this a really, really good glaze. Again, I used that really strongly brewed Earl Grey tea. It needs to be a black tea, but the tea flavor is really coming out, but then it's playing along really nicely with the other spices I added in there. You know, just enough spice to where you're getting that kind of barbecue flavor, but not too much. And the pepper, you know, you're getting a little bit of a nice little bite on the tongue. If you don't want that, then I'd cut it to like 1 teaspoon of black pepper, but this is really good. And pork or chicken, you got money here. If you leave out all the spices and just make a simple syrup, you could make an insanely good old-fashioned. Anyway, we're getting close to putting those ribs on the pit now. As I mentioned in my opening, I am using that Patron, the Lone Star Girls Patron today. As far as fuel, kicked it off with some lump charcoal, and I have a 14-inch split of hickory in there. And I'm just using the door for venting. Right now it's on the very furthest notch. And the side vents are about halfway open. We're running at about 220 degrees Fahrenheit. My target temperature is going to be 250. So I'm going to go ahead and get the ribs on now and just, let the pit naturally rise up in temperature here. Now, as far as my fuel placement, because I didn't mention that, it's on the fire brick down below that adjustable fire grate, which is being used as a heat diffuser for this cook. Really, all I'm doing now is monitoring the pit temps. We're still, rising towards that 250 degree Fahrenheit target temperature. I'm still right around 220, 225. I'm not going to touch the dampers at all right now. If I see that it's going past my target, then of course, I'll close them off a little bit. If I need a little bit more air, I'll open up the dampers on the sides here. Other than that, it's just going to kick back and watch the ribs cook. That last hour, 45 minutes, hour or so of the cook, I'll be hitting them with the glaze. We're at the 3-hour mark. Let's see what kind of progress we're making. Getting a beautiful color here. And remember, this is just salt and pepper. There's no rubs. So I'm just going to keep letting them roll. I will not be wrapping these ribs, and they definitely look nice and moist, so I'm not going to spritz them. So as they get closer to looking like they're getting ready to be ready, I'll be hitting them with a nice slather of that sweet tea glaze. All right, we are at the 3-hour mark now. And I think it's fair to say that these are some gorgeous looking ribs, beautiful color. I just did a quick tenderness check with my instant read. Look how tender these are. Time to glaze. This pit has been holding a very stable 250. Very happy with this pit. I'm just going to baste these in this tray here. I'm going to give these another base with this once I get them actually on the pit. You can see the stuff's just sort of running off. All that pork fat, has come to the surface here. Obviously this one laying flat is looking better, but yeah, I'm going to give these another base once I get them in that pit. These are beautiful. So I'm just looking for a little bit more pullback now, and I want that glaze to set, and then we're going to be ready to eat some ribs, some sweet tea ribs. 4 hours, 45 minutes, these ribs are done. We're not getting that extreme pullback. We are getting some pullback right here. Bendy as I'll get out, and I just don't want to overcook these ribs, waiting for a little bit more pullback. Beautiful ribs. So I'm just going to rest these a little bit, then I'll bring them out and slice up a couple ribs, give them a try. I'm optimistic. Those are some beautiful looking ribs. We're back. Let's check these out. These are some beautiful, beautiful ribs right here. These are try. Nice smoke ring, and as you can see, look at that juice. So when I was a kid, this is the type of ribs we ate, these whole racks, and the first thing I'd always do is just grab the end and pull it off. Get those little pieces of cartilage you have to deal with. I don't know if my camera caught it. I hope it did. I highlighted if it did. But when I was poked the probe in to check for tenderness, and then I was pulling it off to do the glazing, I picked up one of the racks of ribs and a stream of juice squirted out of it. I mean, like a squirt gun. So good. That glaze is on the money. Not too sweet. and it has a little bit of a kind of a floral note to it. It doesn't taste like flowers, but there is a little, like I said, kind of a floral note. It's the best way to describe it. If I were to do anything different on this cook, it would have been reducing the glaze a little more than I did. Once I got to the glazing process, it was just, the glaze was a little looser than I wanted it to be. I want it to be more syrupy than it was, but it still held. Once I reglazed them when they were laying flat, and it did set, and I mean, it's beautiful. I mean, that immediate bite is the sweetness, from the sugar and everything, but then the flavor starts to develop in your mouth, and it's, again, you're tasting the spices and a little bit of the peppery heat. I mean, perfect doneness. It's not falling off the bone, but it is pulling off the bone, which I want a clean bone. These are good. Wow. As far as the cooker went, another great experience cooking on that El Patron. The heat, once I had the temperatures dialed in, it was riding that 250 just very consistently. I mean, there wasn't a lot of spiking or dipping. So anyway, I will have the recipe for this glaze. Believe me, it's worth doing. It's very easy, and it has a very unique but not a crazy flavor. Just really, really good. I'll have that down below. And I'll remind you, just reduce it a little more than I did. You want it to be more syrupy than it was for me. Anyway, I'll have all the links for, if you want to check out El Patron, I'll have the link for that down there as well. If you're not subscribed, please consider hitting that sub button or ringing the notification bell. Thumb it up if you like it. I hope you did. Keep the suggestions coming in. If there's anything you'd like to see me cook on this cooker, let me know. I will see you on the next video. I hate my job. That's a joke. Cheers.